Welcome and thanks for joining us this afternoon for this special Facebook Live Town Hall on innovative public safety approaches. I'm Yael, Ksander, Communications Director for the City of Bloomington, and we've gathered today to share some innovative approaches that the city is proposing in Bloomington, approaches to public safety, that is. Mayor John Hamilton is here with us today. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
To tell us about the 5 new public safety positions that are included in the 2019 budget that will be presented to the City Council and the community during the week of August the 20th. Along with an additional sworn police officer, the mayor also proposes adding 4 non-sworn positions, and those positions are a police social worker, 2 neighborhood resource specialists, and an after-hours ambassador. Joining us today for this discussion, we have assembled quite a crew. We have, along with Mayor Hamilton today, Michael Diekhoff, the police chief of the Bloomington Police Department, to my right. We have also Beverly Calender-Anderson, who's the director of the Community and Family Resources Department here at the city. We have Linda Grove-Paul over here to my right. She is the Vice President of Adult Services at Centerstone in Bloomington. And Karen Allen to my left, who is the Director of the Social Work Program at the IU School of Social Work. Thanks all of you for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to our discussion and sharing with the community these new public safety approaches, this new approach and the new positions that the mayor is proposing. So, Mayor Hamilton, would you share some background with us and some guiding principles about how these positions were created and what they might entail?
Sure. Thanks, and thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for watching, those who are participating. We welcome your questions later, I'm sure, as we go through this. So, you know, as mayor, one of the first things I did was actually ask our police department and the Board of Public Works to go through in systematic detail this 21st Century Policing Task Force that came out of the President Obama's efforts, thinking about how to be a better public safety service, how to provide better public safety service. We also, soon after I became mayor, created a Safety, Civility, and Justice Task Force that brought together a bunch of community people to think about in some of the stress that was going on downtown. How do we enhance safety and civility and justice in our community? And those efforts have led to a lot of things in the community to enhance the downtown, to increase our outreach, to increase data distribution. We're one of the most open police departments in the country. But one definite strong approach has been to increase the community policing focus, to create more connections between the public safety officials and the community and the people at large. And I've often said the more our people know our public safety officials, the better, and the more our public safety officials know our people, the better. And so we've done a lot of things. We've enhanced dispatch countywide. We've increased investments in equipment. We've done a lot in training. But today, what we're really talking about is an unprecedented, I think, investment in the community policing side. How do you connect the public safety efforts of our city government as well as partners more and more connect better and better with the public at large? And in particular, Yael, as you mentioned, you know, talking about 5 new positions. One is really a traditional sworn officer, and we've been adding about 1 officer a year as the population grows in the city, and we're continuing that, and well-trained and well-equipped. But 4 new positions that you referenced are really quite new, and I think an important investment in a new way in community policing. And so we'll get into more of those details, but the idea of a formal social worker in the police department, and you'll hear more about what that person will do. That's a new thing. It's a new position. These are all non-sworn officers, as we say, too. So this is not a badged and an armed officer. These are 4 different kinds of positions. So the social worker, and then 2 neighborhood specialists, neighborhood resource specialists. They will also be focused on connecting with community organizations, community people, outreach, intersections where the community and public safety happen. And then, Beverly, I know you'll talk about the After Hours Ambassador, which will be in your department, not in the police department, that is recognizing a lot of stuff happens after hours, after the city is formally typically closed for much of our offices, not the 24/7 public safety, but to have a position that formally is focused on that kind of 6 p.m. to 2 or 3 a.m., being an ambassador, being a resource, eyes and ears, and anyway. So I'm very excited. This is a proposal. This will go to the city council for a budget request, and we look forward to more input about that. Probably more than you wanted. That's the start.
I'm really excited about discussing these posts in detail, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But I think it might be helpful if we just begin a little bit with more background about this 21st Century Policing Report and this concept of community policing and the Guardian model. Some of these ideas that we've been discussing lately. The idea of community policing, maybe a new one to some folks. Maybe Chief Diekhoff, you can tell us about that.
Sure. So we've always been involved in community policing, but the last couple of years we've really kind of ramped up our efforts in doing those types of activities. As Mayor Hamilton stated, we took the 21st Century Policing Report that came out of President Obama's administration. The whole concept behind that was a way to build trust with communities and reduce crime. And so we went through the report. There were 6 pillars. Those pillars were building trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing and crime reduction, training and education, and officer wellness and safety. Within those core areas, there were over 100 recommendations that were made to police departments to implement to really work with building trust with the communities. And so we spent about 9 months going through that entire report. We worked with our Board of Safety on that report, got their input on it, and then we implemented all of those recommendations in the police department. And some of them were really simple. Some of them were more complex, but we did all of that, and I really do think that it makes us a better department, and it puts us more in tune with the community, and that's really what community policing is about: is working with the community to basically police the community in a way that everyone is acceptable to everyone. And so that's kind of the background of the 21st Century Policing Report. Some of the things that we do. One of our main community policing programs is our Downtown Resource Officer Program.
Right.
And that is, we have 6 officers that work from about 8 in the morning to about 8 at night. And their whole goal is to work mostly in the downtown area, but work with people who are experiencing homelessness, people who have mental health problems, addictions issues, so that we can get them the proper help they might need, to get them the services they might need, so that they're not doing this revolving jail door type thing. And so it's been very successful. We've been able to work with a lot of community partners. We've worked with Centerstone, we've worked with the Shalom Center, different agencies that are providing housing, to make sure that we try to impact those people's lives who are experiencing those issues in a positive way, so that they're not getting arrested and being put in jail, but they're getting the services and the help that they need.
Right, so that preemptive function.
Yes.
Maybe, Linda, would you care to tell us more about your experience of your clients and other individuals in need, and how they have positively benefited from?
Yeah, it's an amazing program, and I think oftentimes in Bloomington we take for granted when we have a program like this, and then it just becomes embedded, and I think people don't necessarily see the value or how innovative it really has been, how groundbreaking. But as Mike mentioned, there are a lot of individuals with substance use disorder and mental health issues that are in and out of the system, and they're in and out of the system because of substance and mental health. And they have a lot of very diverse, very different needs. Many of them are homeless, many are at risk, of homelessness. And sometimes they need really basic things. I mean, it may be clothing, it could be shelter, it could be help with a job, it could be things like childcare. And oftentimes they are individuals who have been pretty alienated, whether it's from kind of the system, community mental health, any other kind of system. And one of the things that we've really found, particularly with, they call them the white shirts as opposed to the blue shirts, the traditional officers, is they really build relationships. They are on foot, they are in the community, and they are meeting with individuals, not with the intention of arresting. And in fact, there's lots of times we encounter people that they could arrest and they don't want to. The intention is to give them the services and the resources that they need, and then to really be almost kind of police social workers, not necessarily with the title of social work, but to connect people to the resources that they need in the community. And so part of what our involvement, and we're one of many community providers that are at the table, but they have several weekly meetings. They have a daily meeting just where you're able to come together and say, here's the 5 people that we've encountered today and the services that they're in need of. Maybe you have an individual that's overdosed on drugs. Maybe you have an individual who had a psychotic break. And because of that, they were, threatening someone, but we know who that individual is. We know that threat is not a serious threat. It's more that this individual needs to get back on their medication, for example. And those white shirt officers will work very closely with us, and they get to know, those individuals in the community to ensure that they're in services. And the kind of services, I guess, I think in thinking about this population is typically they need about 18 to 24 contacts before they're going to even think about engaging. I mean, that's what the data and the research shows us. So we really have to spend time in building relationships. And one example I can think about is an individual we worked with for a long time that just didn't want shoes. Didn't feel like he needed them, and it was about, and this was, winter was coming, and it was about building enough of a relationship so that we could get to the point where we were just helping them with very basic needs. So just examples of, and there's lots of examples where that partnership has really morphed into something and allowed us to see the need for more programs and more services.
In a way, I do think about this as kind of downtown resource officers 2.0. It's really taking what was sworn officers and doing a really important role in the community and thinking about how do we do the next level with some non-sworn officers. So that's what we've been trying to do.
Right, but continuing that emphasis on building relationships and providing services versus crime fighting like we see on TV, but that providing services. Maybe I'd love to get some input both from you, Karen, about the role of a social worker in a police department traditionally and around the country, and also Beverly, if we can speak about your experience of how these relationship building positions have helped in terms of safety and civility in our community.
Well, hi, it's nice to be here today. We have students already working with Centerstone and with the neighborhood resource officer program. So we're already embedded. We have relationships built between those officers and our students and faculty who are volunteering at Shalom. So there are all of these folks that are already intersecting with these at-risk individuals and these people who keep having these police contacts. And so so one of the things about this is it's very, very innovative. There are very few cities across the country that have embedded social workers in the police department. And when Mike and I first met to explore this a bit, I thought, well, I'll go look at the literature because that's what professors do, and I'll see what's out there. And I was shocked. There was nothing out there, and what there was from the United Kingdom and Australia, and it was old. And so that's disappointing. So I really am excited that there is this opportunity here. So one of the things that we see the social worker embedded here with the police is really as a connecting point between all of these initiatives, and somebody who's able to see the big picture and being able to look at data and trends and use the resources in order to think about next steps and how do we respond in different ways. Providing support to the police officers themselves, not that they're going to be doing therapy, but just is everything okay, and can we, do we need to, how are you doing with all of this stuff? So that level, and working at the programmatic level in addition to the case level. We would expect this person to do a lot of training. How do we, and our police officers are really well trained already, but what about de-escalation? Are we, how are we training folks who are intersecting with these individuals to de-escalate the situation? How are we helping people take care of themselves? How are we following up on these at-risk individuals? 18 to 24 contacts. I'm gonna bet probably the police officers aren't tracking that to kind of follow up. That's a great activity for students to do. Where are we sending these folks? We have resource lists. That's another great activity we expect our students to kind of put together. Are there information and education that we need to pull together? Great activities for social work students working in conjunction, with our community partners in the police and a social worker on staff. So we're very excited about it. It's very innovative, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the outcomes are. I'm looking forward to continuing to work and see the impact that it has, and hopefully sharing this with other communities who are looking for strategies to address some of these long-term problems apart from putting more people in prison. So I think it's really exciting. And we have a lot of capacity to support this effort, and I think we're already doing more than folks really probably are aware of. So, but it'll be good to have that linchpin and that social worker kind of does that bridge among all of us.
Just last spring, there was a wonderful report that was produced by the staff of the Indiana Daily Student it was about the fire department, the Bloomington Fire Department, but it really spoke to the need for that kind of internal service for the department in terms of coping with the daily exposure to crisis and tragedy that these public safety officers are dealing with. And so I can really see the value that would bring to the police department to have an embedded social worker.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah.
We're excited. We're already thinking of how to help you recruit for that position and how do we build some training and capacity, looking at some curricular innovations for teaching teaching our students social work in the police. So we're on board with this.
Beverly, I'd love to invite you to join the conversation.
Well,
Give us a
thank
little
you.
background. And
Well, no, you talked about relationship building, and when I think about the Safety, Civility, and Justice Initiative in and of itself, it's a lot about relationships. We started back in 2016 when we were experiencing behaviors in the downtown that were impacting residents' ability, or not their ability, but their desire to come down for leisure activities. Or some people, just being afraid to go to work downtown. And so in the way that we went about it by bringing people together to talk, built relationships. It built relationships between law enforcement and faith communities and people experiencing homelessness or people who were panhandling. It built relationships between government workers and all of these people. And so just talking about that, figuring out what the issues were, coming to some recommendations for how to address it. I mean, that built those relationships, and it continued when that evolved into the Safety, Civility, and Justice Task Force, and they came together and presented a set of recommendations. So I think a lot of this since 2016 has been about relationships and relationship building. I can talk a little bit about the proposed position of the after hours ambassador, and that too will be about relationships, because that person will be a bridge between government and nightlife establishments and residents and IU student organizations, and I mean, so that we'll have that bridge between all of those people.
Yeah, it is. That too is a fairly innovative position. Just doing some research myself, I understand that it's something that they've implemented in London and New York, but has also been adopted in Austin, Texas, Iowa City. It's sort of an exotic title, and we haven't exactly landed on the precise title we're going to use.
We're working on it.
Some people call it a nightmare, some people
Yes.
call it but you know,
Well, they're
obviously,
called different things in different places. Yeah, you're right.
in Bloomington, we have a real bustling nightlife, and it's exciting, and it's you know, not only students but also all of the cultural activity we have going on at night, and that's not anything that anyone wants to mitigate in terms of its excitement. However, there are, you know, public safety issues, but then there's also that whole segment of the economy that doesn't necessarily have daytime access to government officials.
They're sleeping.
Yeah, right.
Well, and this came out of the Safety, Civility, and Justice Task Force specifically, right, to ask.
Yeah, it
for this
did.
position.
One of the things we looked at was an ambassador program, and it was by a company called Block by Block. And then as we looked at that, some of the task force members wanted to know, could we create our own? And so in doing that research, I mean, Yael, you talked about Austin and Amsterdam and London, and we've looked at that. We've talked to folks from London. We've looked at other cities, but there's only one other town and gown relationship that has this, and that's Iowa City. And so Iowa City has been really generous in feeding us information, giving us information, being a resource to us. But you know, like University of Iowa, Indiana University is sort of the downtown is the front door of Indiana University. Indiana University's front door at downtown. I'm not sure which one.
Right.
But either way, we have to collaborate. And so this position will work really closely with student groups, with administration at Indiana University, with our administration, with businesses downtown. You know, there's a lot that happens at Downtown Bloomington, Inc.
Yeah.
So it'll be someone that you know, brings that all together, pulls that all together.
I think that position, we don't know exactly what it'll be
Right.
like, and anybody interested should apply when we have to
When
get it
we
funded.
post it.
When we post it, I know it won't be ready until 2019, but you can call Beverly, all right. No. But you know, it's right. So Bloomington is a very active place, and there's both the kind of eyes and ears, safety, just another person who's focused on kind of the community's well-being. That side, but then there's also the liaison side of trying to enhance that experience and to help institutions that deepen and enrich the nighttime life in the community to help be a liaison to them. So it's a whole mix of things.
And I think it's very real, what you said sort of in passing earlier, is that when bar owners or restaurant managers, when those folks are coming to work, we're all leaving work here. And so to have someone that is that connection to city government will really enhance what they're able to do.
We have a question from someone who's watching. So this comes from Lindsay, who asks, can you explain in more detail what the budget process looks like for these new positions?
Sure. That's always exciting to talk about the budget, I mean, we often say the city budget is the most important policy document that we do. Where do you put your money? What's it investing in? And that process is a very detailed one in front of City Council. City Council appropriates funds, and so what we're doing today is describing what I, as the mayor and the administration, will present to City Council in August, the third week of August, August 21st, I think it begins. 4 nights of budget presentations where we request from the City Council appropriations for all of these funds. So what we're kind of flagging today is 5 new positions, which is a big step. We have about 700 employees right now, and 5 new positions that will be focused on this innovative community policing effort. It will request the City Council to fund that for the 2019 budget. We estimate $350,000 for these positions. That's not all completely set yet, and And one area maybe we haven't talked as much about is those neighborhood resource specialists, and there are 2 of those that would be in the police department itself, but different from anybody you have now, I think, right?
Yeah, so let me just say a little bit about that. So we started, our first kind of project was the Downtown Resource Officer Project. Then we moved to, a couple years after that, we started a Neighborhood Resource Officer. Never really got going because just some mechanic issues. So it was something that we talked about this year, about a way to connect more with neighborhoods. We have very active neighborhood associations in Bloomington. And so this position would really, these positions are going to deal with kind of more of the minor stuff that affect neighborhoods and people who live there, some of the nuisance stuff, and they would kind of be a connection between the resident of the neighborhood association, and the police department, and having them, get resources that the people might need, and do simple things like welfare checks. If somebody says, I'm concerned about my elderly neighbor, they can do those types of things. They can do extra patrols when people might go out of town, and they let us know that, hey, can somebody check on my house while we're gone? The neighborhood resource specialist can do those types of things. So they're going to be really helpful because they can do a lot of stuff that sometimes a sworn officer is just too busy to do, and be that connection, that community connection between the resident in the neighborhood and the police department. So we're really excited about that program because I think that's going to have a huge impact on how we get things done and how we are able to deliver more services to the citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to mention, I think along those lines, Beverly mentioned kind of the safety, civility, and justice, and the mayor, that this is really kind of looking at a 2.0. And I really want to underscore that because I do think that linking all of these pieces together is so important. And the police, they have a very specific job they have to do, and they have limited time to be able to do it. And so much of, in the research, as you look at, the value of a social work, there is a lot of social work type functions that end up falling to the police. But there isn't necessarily the time to, as Dr. Allen talked about, to connect people to all of the resources, to make sure that those pieces are there. And that's what the DRO officers are able to do, but I think the officers in blue sometimes don't have those same kinds of resources that are available to them, or the time to be able to do that. So I think it's a really important next step for us as a community.
And when those welfare checks, and when somebody's concerned about an elderly individual in the community, and the resource officer does some kind of screening, and there might be some concerns, they'll have the backup of the social worker to kind of really go in and take a look at what might be going on, and take whatever next steps might be in the best interest of that individual in the community. So
Kind of improves that community safety net.
Yeah. And more proactive.
I had the opportunity, as you know, Mike, to do a ride-along for 8-hour shift with one of our officers, which is an experience that's valuable. Not everybody can do that, I know, but the more we know, I think, can share that. And I do have to say so police officers, of course, often deal with families or groups or individuals who are having a really bad day. It can be one of their worst days. It can be a conflict that's been brewing, but so much of that interaction is really social work. It's trying to deal with a situation, to de-escalate, to direct toward resources, and our police officers are extraordinarily good and well trained at those things. But what we're trying to do is say, look, the answer is not always to have a sworn armed officer that is needed. Of course, many situations they are, but a lot of situations, a different set of resources and skills can help intercede and respond and help that terrible situation which a family or a group is going through, or an individual, can really be helpful. So we hope that this will help us see, well, what does work best. We're learning with the DROs what works best. We learned it was good for them to carry a phone that they could let somebody use, just little tools sometimes, and I hope this will do the same, where we'll find out what helps a social worker get good results, and what helps a neighborhood resource officer, what works. That's what we want to find out.
I think about the the potential for intervening in the moment after
Yes.
that really bad day has happened, being able to follow up and say, okay, now what? How can we help? And moving after the crisis too, I think is real exciting for me.
Yeah.
We have another question. Thanks for watching. Here is a question from Jean. She or he, or it might be Jean, asks, will the social worker position be filled by a licensed social worker? And will the social worker be involved in providing assistance for police calls that are mental health crises? In other words, danger of suicide or harm to others related to a mental health crisis?
I think so. I don't think we've come down to deciding if it's going to, who's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a licensed social worker, MSW. We're still working those details out, but certainly that position would be involved, that person would be involved in those types of calls. They're going to be an excellent resource when we get those types of calls and respond to those situations, in addressing those types of those calls and getting people help. So, but we're still fleshing out all of the details of the position.
Do you have a view on that? I don't know if you.
You know, I think that this is a developmental thing. So I think the idea of having somebody who's already licensed would be great. Sometimes that's not always possible. Sometimes we're talking about a new graduate. I think we've got the resources to provide support to that individual. We've got resources, to pitch in and support that. So I'm not sure that the licensure is the key thing as much as the right person who can really work with the police and with these individuals to address these crisis situations. And yes, I would see really moving out and being able to intervene in these mental health crises, I think would be certainly critical. We're just looking at requiring all of our social work students to be trained in naloxone administration and overdose prevention. So we're working with the Indiana Recovery Alliance on that. So yeah, it's not so much the licensure. We can get that person licensed through collaborating with other people. It's hard to find people, but certainly somebody with some experience and the right skills and the right mindset to approach it from all of those angles.
And is it usually an MSW? Is that the normal
so.
level?
I would think so. Although I can see, we do have a bachelor student who works very closely with the resource officers. He works at Shalom. But I think for this position, yeah, we would want an MSW, somebody with those experiences. Our MSW program is in mental health and addiction, so that's really what I think we'd be looking for, if the budget permits it.
It's exciting and gratifying to get the buy-in and the involvement of, say, IU School Social Work, Centerstone, other community organizations in this effort. And from what I understand, Beverly, in terms of developing the task force report back in 2016, 2017, some of those early stages involved something like 200 community members, I guess the Community Justice and Mediation Center, CJAN, in their deliberative dialogue phase, asked 200 people?
We did. I mean, we thought that it was important that this be a community-wide process. And so as much of the community as we could get in to have input was what we wanted. And so we did engage with Community Justice and Mediation Center, and they helped to create a process that brought, it was over 200 people together in special groups to have input into this. So those recommendations from those groups fed into the task force, which now feed into what the mayor has appointed a community
coordinating
council.
A lot of acronyms.
which meets quarterly. And so the Community Coordinating Council is continuing to monitor the recommendations and the implementation of those recommendations, and also give input to if there are new issues that we're seeing.
It's also exciting to hear that, for example, the addition of a social worker is a somewhat innovative measure. and that Bloomington is taking the lead to a certain extent in this kind of public safety innovation.
Can I follow up on, I thought one point you made, Karen, Dr. Allen, was really good and well put, which was that I think both the social worker and the neighborhood resource specialists will operate, one, at the casework level, individual cases, but second, at the program level. And each of them will, I think, have an ability to help at individual cases, but they will also, I hope, help us in our public safety efforts to think about programmatically, whether it's training, whether it's protocols, whether it's interaction procedures that we have, relationships, and that's really important. And all that's kind of come out of the 200 people from the Safety Civility Justice, the outreach that we have to remind us again, the more connections there are between our people and our public safety efforts, the better, because that's the old community policing motto, right? Is we are all public safety officers,
Yes,
right?
that's
kind of
very
the
true.
concept.
Well, and I think it's important to know too that even the after-hours ambassador or whatever it ends up being called will be connected to the social workers, will be connected to DROs, will be so that it'll all be connected, and they will be another, like you said, another set of eyes and ears downtown.
Well, and I think it's really important because, like you're saying, it's all about engagement, and a lot of it is about prevention, diversion, what are we doing as a community, and I think engaging communities, as you talked about, like the neighborhood resource officer, to begin to start looking proactively at, what are some things that are maybe going on in a neighborhood? How can we as a neighborhood address that? What are the issues maybe that some of the people in our neighborhood are facing? How do we help them with that? So I think it becomes a very, hopefully, proactive, community-based, conversation where we continue to engage really everybody in the community.
And I don't know that we've mentioned, Mike, but you are thinking of locating some of these people at an untraditional location, I guess, or
Yes,
a new location.
so in 2019, sometime towards probably the end of the year, the Switchyard Park will be completed, and we are going to have a substation in the Switchyard Park. It's the old train station that is right off of Grimes Lane, and so
the north end of the park, right at the
yes,
very
it's the north end of the park, and
right.
So we are looking at housing some of these positions in that new facility, and so that's kind of exciting because we'll have a presence in the park down there, and people can go and if they have issues or problems, they can interact with the people at that location, and it's an exciting proposal that we're looking at.
The first, we don't have any other police substations at present.
We do not.
Right?
We
We're
do
all
not.
at the headquarters right
That's
now.
true,
So that's
yes.
a new step also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, I think what we're all talking about here is really taking a certain demographic, or taking certain individuals who have issues relating to substance use disorder or mental illness, and taking them away from the criminal justice system. I think it sounds to me that kind of historic approach, that maybe mid-20th century approach to issues of addiction and homelessness, things like that, that we're officially and with regard to policy, moving that in a very different direction. And that's already, of course, been underway for a long time, but this is a real demonstrable step in that direction.
I think our community has been really progressive with drug courts and family courts and all sorts of initiatives at that level too, and I see this as plugging that gap between that point of that initial police contact, or those many police contacts, and if somebody does end up going to court, there's somebody there who will know that history, who will know the background and the struggles and all, and I think that just strengthens, and it kind of creates a real continuum of care for somebody who is really, really at risk of being incarcerated for what is a health issue, essentially. So.
Well, let's see. Any other issues that we should address? I mean, I think this is all pretty new and exciting. There will be an additional officer, a sworn officer added, or at least that's proposed in your budget.
Yeah,
So-
I will mention that. We've, since I've been mayor 2.5 years, I stepped into a process that recognized Bloomington's growing by about 1,000 people a year. We have been for a number of years in our police department. In terms of just sworn officers, we want to keep that basic ratio of officers to the public at a good level, well-trained, well-equipped, so we're continuing that steady addition. But I would also say that, I think the really important and innovative effort here is to say expanding the impact and the effectiveness of the police department is not defined by how many sworn officers you have. It's part of it is how well do we interact with the public, and I think as the downtown resource officer showed us, new approaches can really accomplish a lot differently from just adding to what we do. And this, I think today, what we're talking about and what we're proposing is a substantial change to invest in non-sworn officers. So these are not people typically who are going to come through the police academy and come through the law enforcement guardian training model. They're going to be coming at it from a different training background and professional background, and they will be added and grafted and combined into the police force, the existing police force, in a way to try to help that kind of 2.0 version of how do we prevent more, intervene better, respond more intelligently and effectively. And I'm really excited about it. We'll look forward to discussion with the city council. And it's really important to note this is a starting point. We don't know the name for sure of some of these positions. We don't know exactly whether and how they will fit, so we're welcoming input. We've been doing a lot, I know, with nonprofits and partners already, but that's a process that is ongoing and will involve the city council too in a few weeks.
But I'll also say all of these positions, I believe, will help area nonprofits, downtown businesses, whoever. It enhances what they already do. So now that, if you have your social workers, and they're doing referrals, it helps to enhance what nonprofits are already doing, what Shalom or Wheeler or Centerstone, all of those agencies are already doing. So I think that it not only, sort of helps us internally, but when you look at the big picture, it helps enhance what everyone else is doing.
That's right. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. And I think probably give us a better sense of gaps. Too,
Yes.
What
Yeah.
Community needs are and priorities.
And here's a question actually from a viewer that speaks to that a little bit, also from Jean, who asks, will the social worker be involved in discussions on the ongoing improvement of police department policies and procedures to be sure that our police department serves oppressed populations in a way that is free from bias and does not inadvertently communicate a sense of threat or targeting of these populations? In other words, people of color, people experiencing homelessness, LGBTQ people. And then Jean ends with the statement, social work as a profession can bring a unique lens to the examination of systems that have the potential to be oppressive and help to improve those systems. Okay, thanks, Jean.
Certainly.
Go ahead.
Certainly, I think that that position will weigh in on a lot of things we do. Policy development certainly would be something that position, that person would weigh in on. We have policies in place that guide our operations, and that's important that we have that viewpoint also and that input into our policies, so that we're here to make sure we do things the right way, and that new position I think will be vital to that also.
Kind of what you talked about, that dual level casework and policy and plan level.
And I think somebody who really has some real leadership capacity, because I think there's going to be, whether or not it's a formally constructed team or an informally constructed team, there's going to be pulling people together to look at situations, look at cases, go back and think about how something was handled and analyze it and things like that. So I think those kinds of skills are going to be really, really important to this position, in addition to a real good grounding in being able to intervene with people. who have mental health, domestic violence, elder abuse, too. So all of those issues in our community.
And I think the kind of the traditional line police officers, it's a big resource for them who can call in and help, right? And or do an after action kind of analysis. Say, look what happened here. How can we do it differently? How what can bring better outcomes? And it's really an important opportunity. I'm looking forward to. I hope we'll get a positive support from the city council for this. We'll see in August.
Let's hope for that. Let's see. Looks like our audience is quiet for the moment. We'd love to hear from you if you're watching and you have any question about the details of these positions or the community policing philosophy or anything else about safety, civility, and justice in Bloomington. We'd love to hear from you. Any comments from our panelists today? A sense of, I'm personally a little bit curious about whether there's any pushback whatsoever within the police department. Some of the people who've been there for 30, 40 years. I can imagine that some of these ideas might seem a little magical or something to some folks.
We have a pretty progressive police department, and anything that we do that can make what we do better, I think is always going to be supported. It's different, but it's not unheard of. Our neighbors to the west, Illinois, have a police social worker professional organization, so it's not unheard of. It's just not very widely known, I think, in Indiana, and so we can take the lead on that. I think that we can build a successful program that I can talk to other police departments around the state about implementing also. Yeah. Our officers are supportive of it because they just see it as another resource to make sure that we serve people and do the job the right way and get people the help that they need. So I think they're excited about it. I'm excited about it. Hopefully the city council will be excited about it and support it.
I was thinking a couple examples. Change is always can be difficult, challenging, but I was thinking of a couple changes. One, of course, the Downtown Resource Officer Program was a new thing, and it's all voluntary, right?
It is.
And maybe talking about what that's been like, who's wanted to do it, has it been difficult to recruit? And second, as I recall, when we put in body cameras, which we have now, there was some response and questions about that. But I mean, those are examples of changes that have proven effective, I think.
Yeah, the Downtown Resource Officer Program was fairly different. And when we first started it, we asked for volunteers. We still ask for volunteers to sign up for it. I certainly don't want to make someone do it if they're not interested in doing it. And so it's been very popular with the officers. They see the value in that program, that we're able to help people who have either an addictions issue or a mental health issue and get them the resources and the help they need. And I think it's actually for those officers who have done it, it's been quite rewarding. It's a different way to police. I mean, most people get into policing because they want to help people, and that's an excellent way to do it. The mayor mentioned the body-worn cameras. That was something initially that officers were a little skeptical of, but if their camera's not working, they go find a replacement really quickly because it records the incidents, and they do their job the right way, and it records it. And so when people might make an allegation that they did something wrong, the first thing we do is we go to the body camera footage and we look at that, it's been very productive, that the body camera. So change is hard, but it's not always easy, but it's good. And those are really two good things that have been pretty big changes for us that have been very positive.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear too the leadership that you're providing to other police departments around the state and probably the country.
Yeah, it's any more police departments, police officers, the majority of the incidents you deal with involve someone that has some kind of mental health issue or an addictions issue, and so if we can get more professional help with a social worker to help us do our job and give us guidance on things and training, that's just going to make it easier for the officers to do their job and make it better for the community.
I think the thing that's really striking to me is how this is being presented as something that's a win-win for the community and for the individuals and for the police officers. It's not like they're doing anything wrong and that we need to fix it by going to a different model. It's just this is a way of supporting everybody. And I can think about how looking at an incident and kind of dissecting it about how could we do it differently would be really, really sensitive if people didn't feel safe and feel like we want the same thing. We want people to be taken care of. We want our communities to be safe. We don't want to be locking mentally ill people up in jails where they don't belong. And so because that's the common ground, if we can stay there and really listen and bring our different perspectives to the table, it really has a potential for a really terrific impact. So
it makes me also think, we talk about prevention model, trying to prevent problems. I really do view this as you said, investing in a very good public safety program to try to be ahead of the curve, we know what we're dealing with, and we don't think that's probably going to change in the coming years, and the police are asked to do so many things and to do it well and to respond. And to me, this is kind of an investment in prevention in our public safety efforts to try to make sure we're ahead of the curve, if not ahead of the curve, at least riding with that, to be looking at these different approaches, learning from them, so that as we continue to evolve as public safety efforts, that we get better. It also goes to the open data initiative that we're one of the most transparent police departments in the country. I know you're active with that, and sharing data on what happens and reporting publicly in many ways, because the public safety effort belongs to the public, and we need to keep getting better at it. And I'm really proud of what we do, but this is kind of an investment in prevention for our police and public safety efforts as well, I think.
And I think, to the point you were just talking about transparency too. I mean, I think a social worker, and as you discussed, really looking at what are some of the things that we can do better or do differently. And I think we've really made a good start with that, but there's definitely more that can be done.
I think it's really exciting as an academic to be invited into this, because we always get real concerned about, how aligned is what we're teaching to what's really going on in the community, because curriculums and courses get dusty, and and so the idea of really having that connection to know we need to start training our students about this and preparing them for this, and also there's a real advantage to the university for us to be here and learn as we all go through this.
There had been some discussion possibly about exploring internships.
I don't think that's a problem. I think we've probably got more internships. Beverly had mentioned when she said hello to me that she had gotten a call from our office already about student interns. And our school is very supportive. Sometimes where there's issues where there isn't a social work supervisor, that can kind of be an issue. We have ways of supporting grassroots agencies and helping build capacity in our community. So the School of Social Work has been able to really help communities, with supervisory issues and some other things like that. So
it's a great resource. Now we'll have a supervisor maybe with the social work on staff.
I think that would be wonderful.
Terrific.
Yeah, you make a great point though about scholarship and policy coming together. Big challenge, and it's great to have you on board, so thanks. So yeah, we have just a few minutes left. Looks like our audience is quiet for the moment, but if anyone else has a final remark or takeaway that you'd like to.
Well, anybody want to add anything, or I'll just land this thing if we can. I just can't land a Facebook Live, and just turn it off, I guess. But we really appreciate everybody following either live or however you do. I want to thank our members of this group, too diverse and from different voices to help us, and just say I think this is an important step. We'll be proposing to help take another level of community engagement and connection in the whole public safety effort, as well as this nighttime new step into that world a little bit. And we're trying things. That's what we do. And I think this is an important step forward, and we'll all keep talking about it and seeing how it works. But I think this is the kind of community that supports this development of new approaches, and that's always been good. We appreciate the public safety officials who work so hard every day for all of us, and this is just a way to try to enhance that impact. And we'll look forward to continuing this talk as we keep going.
Yeah, really exciting. And so I would like to just, again, introduce our panelists. Before we sign off, we've been speaking today about innovative public safety approaches with Mayor John Hamilton of the City of Bloomington, also Police Chief Michael Diekhoff of the BPD, Beverly Calender-Anderson, the Director of Community and Family Resources Department at the City of Bloomington, Dr. Karen Allen, the Director of the Social Work Program at the IU School of Social Work, and Linda Grove Paul, the Vice President of Adult Services at Centerstone. I'm Yael, Ksander, the Communications Director for the City of Bloomington. Thanks so much for joining us.